job's a joke you broke, your love life's the away. It's like you're always stuck in second gear, when it hasn't been your day, your week, your month, or even your year. But I'll be there for you when the rain starts to fall. I'll be there for you when the feeling goes. I'll be there for you 'cause you're there for me too.
Yeah, I know, another collab project for me, but it was for Zelda. I couldn't help but jump at it. Next to the Tales series and Mario, Zelda is probably one of my most favorite video game franchises ever. The gameplay being fun and most of the storylines simple yet enjoyable, how could I not resist? So I've chosen to take on my second favorite Zelda game, Wind Waker being my main favorite, The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. Now I'm ashamed to admit that I don't have any of the fancy video capture cards that most people have, just the power of frames, and even then that is worthless. So forgive me as I will be using an emulator for this one. Perhaps one day fortune will move me out of this current job and home and lead me to a more dependable and rich environment. You mama's boy. Go to hell! You know how the economy is right now? Let's just begin. The game was released in 1998 for the N64. Originally, it was meant to be on the N64 disk drive, but instead an expansion was planned for it instead. Unfortunately, it never came to be, and the expansion would come as a bonus on the collector's edition of the game on GameCube, known as Master Quest. There's a bit to say on the matter, but for now, let's just talk about the main game. The story centers around Link, of course, who in this game is a young child. He lives in a forest with other children who all have fairy partners except him. One day, after receiving a nightmare of what might be the future, a fairy named Navi tells him about how she'll be his new partner and that the Great Deku Tree is in need of his assistance. Link succeeds in breaking the curse, but is unable to save the Guardian from dying. But before then, he tells Link about his destiny and that he must seek out Princess Zelda, who will lead him on a journey to find mystical treasures in order to defeat the evil Ganondorf, who plans on taking over the land of Hyrule using the legendary Triforce. This journey will take him all across the land, and even through time. The gameplay is what you come to expect from a Zelda game, and it doesn't matter when you got into the series since it all follows the same principle. It's all about exploration, interaction, beating down enemies and bosses, collecting items that help further your exploration, as well as obtaining the magic MacGuffins that are meant to bring you closer to the final villain, who in this case is Ganon. However, Ocarina of Time was the first 3D Zelda game at the time, meaning that all the gameplay aspects you would have known from the 2D games would further expand as it brought on new opportunities. But we'll get to those as we go along. The controls are pretty standard for its time. Movement with the joystick is responsive, though there's like a short delay every time you start moving or suddenly go in the opposite direction. You can attack with the B button, interact or perform certain actions with A, and you can use items assigned to the 3 C buttons shown on the screen. Plus with R, you can use your shield and even hold it in any direction in front of you, something that would later be useful in dungeons involving light reflection. Now the Z button lets you lock onto most things, and pressing A while locked on or just holding Z will let you do a jump attack. If you press the up C button when prompted to, Navi will tell you more about certain things. She also does this periodically while you're out in the open, reminding you to go places. It's handy if you haven't been playing for a while, but some people might be a little bit annoyed by her voice.
Hello, listen, hey.
Anyway, throughout the game you'll be collecting items like bombs, Deku Nuts, Deku Sticks, and of course the essentials like a boomerang, the slingshot, bow and arrows, and my favorite item of the game, the hookshot. All in which help you solve the various puzzles within the dungeons, as well as beat the bosses designed for them. There are also items meant for the side quests, bottles you can collect that hold certain things, and you can even get magic spells that cast fire, create warp points, and even shield yourself for a limited time. Now, given the transition to 3D, the ranged items like the bow become even more awesome as you can shoot anywhere now. No longer are you just shooting in front of you like in earlier games. You can fire anywhere you want, or anything that's targeted. This also means that objects that can be activated through said items can be placed anywhere, making the puzzles more dynamic and complex. If there's anything that graphics are good for, is setting up the world and how you interact with it. Now, in addition to your standard inventory, you can collect special equipment that you'll be able to swap with. Mostly as Adult Link though, you can switch between swords, shields, tunics, and even boots. Like the Goron tunic lets you resist places with intense heat. while the Zora tunic lets you breathe underwater. The iron boots help weigh you down a bit, and the hover boots let you float for a short period of time when you run off of cliffs. Now the main item you'll be using throughout most of the game is the Ocarina of Time. This item allows you to play different songs that you learn as you advance. These songs all have different effects, like the Sun song lets you change the time of day, Epona's song which lets you call Epona should you do the side quest for her, or even the Song of Time which lets you remove or make time blocks appear. There are even songs that warp you to certain dungeon entrances, making travel less of a hassle later on in the game. Now the game has a special world mechanic similar to the Dark World system from Link to the Past. Whenever you go to the Temple of Time and interact with the pedestal for the Master Sword, you will warp to either your future or past self. Depending on which Link you are, you can only use items that the younger version or the adult version can use. Not to mention, the areas in the game will have different treasures and layouts than the other. In other words, you'll be going back and forth a lot just to get everything done, which include locating heart pieces that help you give you more life once you've found 4 of them. Now the dungeon layouts all have a more dynamic feel than in previous games, and will require a lot more exploration to find the various secrets hidden within. Some dungeons though, like the water temple, tend to be a pain in the ass since you're constantly changing the water levels. Plus you're always switching to the menu in order to swap boots, and sinking in the water takes a while, so until you reach ground, you can't use your hook shot, which is the only thing you can use underwater. Still, the dungeons keep in theme with what they represent, and the Shadow Temple by far has to be the scariest dungeon in the entire game. I mean, geez, bloodstains, guillotines, the dead hand, and let's not forget the re-dead. For any little kid playing this game, this was freaking scary. Now when you're not exploring dungeons, you can take part in the minigame events that will sometimes give you item upgrades. There's even a fishing game you can do which has its own little Easter egg. Oopsie! You probably want that back. Also throughout the game, you'll be running into what are called gold Skulltulas, in which the more you kill, the more rewards you can get from the family that is cursed by them. There are 100 of these things to kill, so good luck hunting! Now the boss battles all follow the same concept of having to use the key item you found in the dungeon to win. And naturally, the progression in difficulty is steady, in which it doesn't get any harder than it should be. They certainly are fun too.